No one is above the law. You've heard that phrase constantly these past few years, especially from pundits and politicians on both sides of the aisle. But if everyone agrees that we all live under the law, why does it feel like we're living in such lawless times? Phil and I will be tackling that question, and later we'll present our POC Top 3 and more odd and irrelevant news you can't use. All this coming up on The Physics of Civics.
The rule of law, that's a term that is frequently used and often misunderstood. And I think to fully comprehend it, we got to start by understanding that this concept of rule of law is an ideal, okay? Meaning it's something that we strive for, but never can quite implement perfectly. One of the ways that rule of law has been described is that America is a nation of laws and not of men. But what does that even mean? Men and women make the laws. Men and women enforce the laws. Men and women choose whether to follow the laws. What it means, I think, is that it's the law that we are obligated to obey, not the people in charge. It means that no one's fate is in the hands of any single individual. Rather, it is the legal process that determines one's fate, right? I mean, everyone is entitled to a fair and impartial hearing in accordance with law to determine their legal rights. And no one's life, liberty, or property can be arbitrarily taken away without due process of law. I think, Jay, this is absolutely critical to a free civil society, that the same legal standards apply equally to everyone, from the most powerful down to the least.
Right.
And, of course, as we mentioned, that's the ideal. Doesn't always work that way. But when people say, and I think rightly so, that no one is above the law, that's essentially what rule of law means in a nutshell, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, absolutely. Right.
Government exercises power through the law, but government is also constrained by law. And that's what protects the rights and the liberties of free individuals like you and me.
Like, follow, share, and subscribe today. This episode of The Physics of Civics is brought to you by Savage Soaps. Shop SavageSoaps.com for luxurious, all-natural soaps and other skin-loving products for men and women, all made right here in America from sustainably sourced, plant-based ingredients. Get wet with Savage. It might be helpful to provide a bit of historical context here, Phil. So where did this rule of law or no one is above the law concept originate? We'd start with the Magna Carta, which was signed in 1215. This was really a groundbreaking document that basically told the English king, hey, you're not above the law.
No.
It was a deal made between King John and his rebellious barons, laying out some key legal principles, really to curb royal power.
Yeah, I think it started out just as kind of a modus operandi for these warring factions to get along, but it became more than that.
And I think in some ways the king was kind of forced into accepting it because things weren't going so well for him.
Right.
It said things like, which we appreciate today, everyone, even the king, had to follow the law. Now, this had never been the case before.
Never.
In the history of mankind, as far as we know.
No, the king, the emperor, he is the law.
He is the law, and he does what he wants, and he gets away with it.
Right.
It also set up these ideals like due process and the limits on arbitrary taxation. Mm-hmm. You think of it, I guess, as an early step towards fairness in law, really.
Right.
Even if it was mostly for the nobles at first. 570 years later, we had the Federalist Papers, Phil, which was an updated version, I guess, of the Magna Carta, really.
You could think of it that way.
They certainly modeled it after the Magna Carta.
Right. Well, it's really kind of explaining their thinking behind the Constitution.
It was written in 1787, and it was written by folks like Hamilton and Madison. And it was basically a series of...
Don't forget Jay.
Absolutely, Jay. It was basically a series of essays is what it was. But it was hyping up the U.S. Constitution, like you said. Right. But when it came to the law, they were all about explaining why a strong federal government was needed to create a fair, consistent legal system across all the states. Okay, and they argued that the Constitution would set up a government with clear checks and balances, which they did. They would have the courts and Congress and everything that came later. They also pushed the idea that federal law and courts would help unify the country, making sure that things like trade and justice weren't a chaotic mess between states.
Right.
It was their way of saying you must first enable the government to control the governed. And in the next place, oblige it to control itself. And I think that kind of says it all.
Right. That's James Madison's book.
Right.
Yeah.
That was Madison. And of course, we have the Supreme Court, which was established to really be a referee when it comes to U.S. law.
Mm-hmm.
Its main job isn't really about enforcing laws in the sense of, cops or agencies or so forth, but rather making sure the laws are interpreted and applied correctly and evenly, right?
Right.
The Supreme Court hears big cases that often deal with constitutional matters, conflicts between federal and state laws, and their rulings set the final word on what's legal and what's not.
Right. And establish precedent, and courts is all about following precedent until it's not.
The Supreme Court decides which cases it will take. So I don't know how many cases they look at in a year and how many they actually take. But if it doesn't fall within that kind of that jurisdiction of being a federal law or conflict between states and federal, they typically won't take a look at it.
Right.
Their decisions are binding and they guide how laws are enforced nationwide. Okay. It's like they're the guardians of the legal rule book, really keeping everyone playing fair. I think that's the best way to kind of understand what the Supreme Court is.
Yeah, I think that's how it's supposed to work. And by and large, that's how it has worked. They take those cases that are really going to kind of chart the path because these things are going to come up.
Right.
These questions are the ones that, the Supreme Court feels we need to decide these.
Yeah.
Because it's going to come up again.
Right.
But in our time, we find that the rule of law is very much under attack from the left. And once again, when we talk about the left, we're not talking about liberals. We're talking about the Marxist radical left. And we discussed the difference in another episode. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss that one. But we're living in very difficult and dangerous times. Someone asked, do you think we're seeing the rise of socialism in America? No, I don't. I think that's been going on for the last 20 years or more. In fact, there has been a Marxist political faction here in America for at least the last 100 years.
Right.
Whether you want to call them leftist or radical or socialist, progressive, whatever, they're basically Marxist. And up until recently, they've been working pretty patiently and methodically. And they've been kind of masterful at being patient and accepting half a loaf over the years. You know what I mean? And just kind of ratcheting things to the left.
Yeah, a little piece here and a little piece there and incrementally.
Right. And to try to create the conditions and set it all up for a successful socialist revolution in America. And when I say revolution, I mean they want to overthrow our constitutional republic.
Absolutely.
And establish one-party Marxist rule. Now, this is nothing to be, this is not remarkable. It's what Marxists have been doing all over the world for 100 years or more. It's what they believe in, right?
Yeah.
But it seems, Jay, that in spite of all their efforts, either the revolution has launched and failed, or it just failed to launch. Either way, it looks like they've lost.
Right.
I mean, their moment has clearly passed and they missed their chance. And now the movement is kind of in its terminal phase. Why? Partly because they've chased away all but the most ideologically pure among them. Mm-hmm. That's why there's no liberals left in certainly no more moderate Democrats in the Democratic Party.
Zero. Yeah.
And also because they've kind of been blown away by a bigger, more dynamic and more distinctly American movement that's known as MAGA. And I think that's pretty clear. And now that Trump's back in the White House, it's too late for the left to do anything about him.
Right.
Or the movement that he inspired, other than to get real angry and express their hatred, which they've been doing.
Yeah, plenty of.
But like it or not, that's where we are.
Yeah.
Leave a comment. Tell us what you think. But that's where I think we are.
I think that's exactly right.
The dangerous part of that is that the Marxists don't know they've lost. They seem to think, Jay, that they're still in the driver's seat somehow and that their ideas are still popular. They're not.
No, obviously. You look at the polls.
Did you see that movie came out in 2001, The Others? It's Nicole Kidman plays a young mother with two young children living in this huge country mansion.
Yeah.
And at some point, they start to hear noises and voices, and they think that the house is haunted.
Creepy. What
they don't realize is that the voices are those of the living who have moved into the mansion, and they're the ones haunting it. They don't realize that they're the ghosts because they don't know they're dead.
Great analogy.
Right? Now, perhaps the Marxists know that they're dead and they're running out of runway and that this is their last chance. But either way, it's clear that their days of being patient and methodical and working within the system are over.
Right.
You know, that's not doing anything for them. Now they have to pull out all the stops. You know, no more Mr. Nice Guy. They're out for blood. And I think they believe they have no choice.
You think that's what it is? That's what's leading to the surge in violence we've seen here in the last...
I do. Yeah. I think that's what's going on here.
Right.
And, but I think folks need to understand...
It's like a last gasp.
That this is where Marxism inevitably leads.
Every time.
Always.
Yep.
Violence is baked into the system. Don't believe me? Just listen to what the Marxists have been saying for the last 100 years. Start with Lenin. He was a Marxist, you think?
Mm-hmm.
He said, quote, "Not a single problem of the class struggle has ever been solved in history except by violence. The revolutionary dictatorship of the proletariat is rule won and maintained by the use of violence by the proletariat against the bourgeoisie, rule that is unrestricted by any laws." Kind of a key phrase there, right?
Yeah, very much so.
Mao Zedong put it more succinctly. He said famously, "Political power grows out of the barrel of a gun." More recently, we can look at Saul Alinsky. And for those who are not familiar with Alinsky, have you heard of him?
Oh, absolutely. Of course.
He wrote the book Rules for Radicals back in 1971. And since then...
Hillary Clinton.
Right. That has been pretty much the playbook for the progressive left. Like you say, Hillary Clinton, she did her senior thesis at Wellesley about Alinsky. Barack Obama studied at the feet of Alinsky's own disciples in learning how to become the, quote, community organizer. Really, when you read that book, when you read Alinsky, a lot of what's been going on for the last 20 years starts to make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Here's what Alinsky says. "Before men can act, an issue must be polarized. They must feel so frustrated, so defeated, so lost, so futureless in the prevailing system that they are willing to let go of the past and change the future."
Wow.
That's what it's all about.
That's crazy.
You know?
Yeah.
And perhaps the most prominent Marxist of the last 50 years has been Noam Chomsky. Here's what he said. "The more you can increase fear of drugs and crime, welfare mothers, immigrants, and aliens, the more you can control all the people."
Part of the reason we're doing this topic is what sparked it really is the upturn in violence that we've seen recently on the left. Now, what we hear on the network news and the legacy media and politicians on the left is that, oh, the right commits more violence than the left and so on and so forth, or they both do it. That's the big thing now.
Both sides,
and there's some truth to that. I mean, there's no you can't sit and deny that far right fringe groups have committed violence in the past. Certainly they have, but not to the extent we're seeing now.
No.
What they don't tell you on the left now, the deep state really looks the other way at left's violence. Let's just look at an example. The obvious one is the George Floyd riots, the summer of 2020, right?
Summer of love.
Mostly peaceful. No one essentially got arrested. Do you know that at least a couple dozen people were killed? And they're looking at estimates. Insurance companies are still obviously digging out from it. It could be $2 billion to rebuild.
Oh, yeah. And no one got arrested.
Nobody got arrested.
Not a single arrest.
And if they did, they got let go the next day on a minor misdemeanor, pay a fine kind of thing. And then you look at January 6th. You've got grandmothers who, strolled into the Capitol not really knowing what was going on, and they're sitting in jail for 5 years.
Right. That whole thing lasted a couple hours.
Right.
Okay. The summer of love went on for months.
And that's all they have, on the left is January 6th. January 6th was a bad day. And it was a riot, and it was a bad thing.
Yeah.
But my goodness,
sense of proportion here.
Speaking of proportion, look what happens to people on the left who get in trouble for something compared to right. And I mean, did you hear about, I can't think of the guy's name, but the dude who hit Pelosi's husband with a hammer.
Oh, yeah.
He was a nut job. I mean, he deserves to be in trouble. But they just sentenced him.
Thank goodness Pelosi is
Thank God he's okay. Yeah, he recovered fully. Thank goodness. But my point is, that guy got life in prison without parole.
Right.
That just seems absurd to me.
Because he attacked a Democrat.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And that's what we're talking about here with law. It's supposed to be the same for everyone, right?
It's not.
My feeling is it's not right now.
I don't think anyone disagrees with that.
I mean, I don't know how you can make the argument on the left that it's even, that it's the same. I mean, we are seeing an outgrowth of violence on the left from Charlie Kirk on. And this is how I see it. And I think a lot of people will agree with me. If you're on the right, you can disagree with the left or specific people on the left. You can have an argument. You can say they're stupid. But that's a lot different from what we hear from the left when they're talking about their, I'll call them enemies, on the right. I mean, they call them fascists and Nazis, and they need to be taken out. And all this violent speak that we're hearing from prominent Democrats in Congress and elsewhere.
And what do they think is going to happen from that?
And then you got
they know it's going to happen.
People who are a little off the rocker take that to the bank and, you know, take out Charlie Kirk.
We're not just talking about nut jobs with guns.
No, ideologues.
And we're talking about heavily funded terrorist insurrectionists.
Right.
Okay.
Absolutely.
You have to look no further than Antifa.
Yeah.
These people are funded. They've got weapons. They are organized. These are not just a bunch of nut jobs. This is a radical, violent movement.
Charlie Kirk, his Turning Point organization. If you're a white supremacist, if you're a fringe right anarchist, you're not invited into our group. You're not allowed to be there. But if you look at the left today, you've got this violent trans movement. You've got these eco-terrorists. You've got, even Hamas.
Yeah.
Do you hear anybody on the left saying?
Is anyone renouncing them?
Nobody. It's shocking to me.
It's deafening.
Even Hamas, who murdered 1,000, whatever it was, on October 7th 2 years ago. I mean, we need a couple of prominent Democrats to come out and say, this isn't right.
This is crazy.
This is nuts. Talking like this about other human beings is screwed up. You can disagree with them. You can say they're ugly and they're fat and they're morons. But when you start calling them
Nazis and Gestapo and fascists,
and saying they need to be taken out and destroyed and gotten rid of
because they're enforcing federal law.
In that
it's
particular
just not right.
case, in the case of ICE, but that goes
not right.
across the board. I mean, they do this in so many situations.
We go back to these quotes from these Marxists. It's unmistakable what they're going for here. In order for their revolution to succeed, they have to work to make the status quo so intolerable that people will be willing to give up their liberty for the promise of a, quote, better society. And the quickest and surest way to do that is with the breakdown of law and order. When people get scared and angry enough, they will be easy to control and ripe for revolution. One only need to take the Marxists at their word.
Scary.
But it's too late, I think.
I think you're right.
I think they're too late. What we're seeing is not the rise of Marxism in America, but rather the death rattle, if you will. The last desperate flailings of a failed movement as it's being smothered under the pillow of liberty, if I could paint the picture here. And until they realize the futility of their cause, and I believe it is futile. I think they've missed. They'll continue to do as much damage as they can for as long as they can. And I think you're right. I think somebody on that side of the aisle needs to stand up and say, enough. It's one thing for MAGA Republicans to say it.
Right.
It needs to come from someone prominent on their side, that a voice that cannot be disregarded. Someone's got to do it. Someone's got to have the guts. So far, we haven't seen it.
You've got the real upper echelon of the Democratic Party don't necessarily condone the actions of these fringe groups on the left, but they don't condemn it.
Well, you know what? I think they do condone it. I think they understand that that's their only hope.
Maybe you're right.
I think they understand where they are. Chuck Schumer is not a moderate. Okay.
Yeah.
Nancy Pelosi is not a moderate. These old guys who have been in Congress and the Senate for years, Tim Kaine and these guys, they're not moderates.
No.
They are leftists. And they have been for a long time. So let's not get them off the hook so easily.
If you're a moderate Democrat in this country today, you cannot get elected to office.
Right. And if you are a moderate Democrat listening to this podcast, we really want to hear from you. Tell us what you think in the comments below. Well, Jade, now is the time for our POC top 3.
Hey-o.
And what did we agree on for today? The top 3 male role models from cinema. Now, we're talking about characters, not actors, but the men in the movies who are the top 3 role models. Who do you have?
My number 3 is a movie a lot of people probably didn't see. It's called Dan in Real Life, and it's with Steve Carell.
Didn't see it.
It's about a guy who is a widower. His wife passed away fairly recently, and he's trying to raise 3 teenage daughters. And on his way to Thanksgiving to be with his family, and it seems like it's the first Thanksgiving maybe that he's had to go without his deceased wife and his 3 girls. And he gets fed up with all the BS going on in the family, and he goes to a local, gets out to get a cup of coffee or something, and he meets this beautiful woman. And they have a couple of minutes kind of clicking together, and he's kind of a nerdy, quiet guy.
Okay.
Goes back home, thinks about her. His brother comes in for Thanksgiving, and that woman that he ran into is his brother's girlfriend. But it's really a poignant movie. He's a good person trying to raise 3 girls, and it really touched me. It was a cool movie.
All right, we'll check it out.
Number 2 is George Bailey, man, from It's a Wonderful Life. What could be better than that? Jimmy Stewart, right?
Well, just think about this, Mr. Potter.
He sacrifices all his personal dreams and for his community and well-being, and it's kind of corny.
And his family.
I mean, it's post-war. It was in 1946, I think. So it fits that mold. But he's a role model.
That's a lot of people's favorite Christmas movie,
and it should be. I watch it every Christmas. My number 1, Phil, is a movie called Being There. Do you remember that one from 1979 with Peter Sellers?
One of the best movies ever.
I watched that movie in the theater. It was 1979, so I was, 20 years old.
Right.
When that movie ended, I couldn't get up. I just sat there for a minute going, because the ending is really interesting. I'll leave it there. And he's basically about this guy, for those of you who haven't seen it, who is kind of I would say he was on the autism spectrum.
Kind of a savant.
Yeah, kind of a savant. But what's interesting is he gets in this circle of people, and through a bunch of things, he ends up being a politician, wanting to run for office. And he makes these off-the-cuff, silly comments about him as a gardener, and they take it to be this wisdom, these words of wisdom that are just amazing. But anyway, I thought that was a really fascinating character. I once saw an interview with Peter Sellers that said that was the role he dreamt of his entire life. He was very proud of that movie.
It was the best thing he ever did.
It was fantastic. So those are my top 3. What about you?
All right. So I'm going to start. Number 3 is John McClane from the Die Hard movies. I love John McClane because he has no superpowers.
Right, yeah.
He doesn't have any cool gadgets or any major abilities. He's just a New York cop who has a kind of an instinct to protect people.
Right.
He doesn't care, no matter how bad the bad guys are, he will put himself in between them and the good people.
True.
And he won't stop until they're safe.
Yeah.
No matter how bloody he gets. and I love that about John McClane.
Well, that's some people's favorite Christmas movie.
Well, it is.
People call it a Christmas movie.
Some people don't call it a Christmas movie. I do.
Yeah.
Number 2 is Oscar Schindler from Schindler's List.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, this is the German industrialist during the Nazi years who sacrificed and put his life and business on the line to save innocent Jews from the Nazi Holocaust.
That's a hard movie to sit through, man.
It is a difficult movie to sit through, but it's
brilliant,
man. As far as a role model, wow, something to aspire to. Number one is Atticus Finch.
Oh yeah,
from To Kill a Mockingbird. Gregory Peck plays a lawyer from Macon, Georgia. He's kind of an educated man in a community of rubes who has the temerity to defend a black man who's being charged with raping a white woman. It came out in the early 60s, very, socially charged. He's also doing that while trying to raise 2 young children.
Right.
And the children, of course, they're crazy and adorable, but his interaction with the kids and his, lessons of right and wrong, what a great role model he is. Yeah. Kind of reminds me of my own dad.
Yeah.
Atticus Finch in a way.
That's
so
cool.
I kind of relate to that.
That's one of my all-time favorite books. I just absolutely love that book.
Harper Lee.
And it's the only thing she ever wrote. It's so weird. She wrote one. Oh, that's not true. She wrote another book afterwards, but really that was one of the greatest American novels of all time, considered by a lot of literary experts. And she was not prolific at all. She didn't. She really didn't.
No, but she nailed it with that one.
Great movie.
Great movie. All right, Jay, I think you have in store for us a bit of oddly, weirdly, strangely funny, but completely irrelevant news you can't use.
This is a story out of Sky News. What happened is this 80-year-old woman, and this is in Japan, she was sending money to an online fraudster, which is sad, right? Most of these fraudster guys reach out to these old people and tell them, they're a prince in the
Nigerian prince scam,
or something like that, and they fall for it. Or this is your credit card company calling, and I need a new address. No, this dude told this woman that he was an astronaut, that he was on a spaceship, and that he was running out of oxygen, and he needed money to buy oxygen. This woman sent this guy like 5,000 pounds. British sterling. So I guess that's $3,800 in American money. Don't know what to say about that. I mean, sadly, the lady, maybe she's got Alzheimer's or dementia or something. So, but they said, no, she was sharp as a tack, just dumb as a brick.
Just fool, just dumb as a box of rocks.
That's all I got.
Well, folks, that's our show for today. We're glad you joined us. Don't forget to like, share, follow, hit that subscribe button. And we will see you here next time on The Physics of Civics.